What would you do if the woman you love looked you in the eye and promised to take your children away from you? The words still burned in my mind like acid, replaying over and over, each time cutting deeper. I wasn't supposed to hear them. I wasn't supposed to know. But once you've seen the mask slip, once you've caught that flash of cold calculation in someone you thought you could trust, you can't unsee it. That night my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might shake the walls. My daughters Sophie and Grace were upstairs safe for now, but I could feel the danger creeping closer with every passing hour. I didn't know how much time I had left before she made her move. All I knew was that I had to be ready, because when betrayal comes from inside your own home, the fight isn't just about survival, it's about protecting every piece of your soul. Stay with me because what happened next turned my family's life upside down. And if you think you've guessed how it ends, you're wrong. The truth will hit harder than you can imagine. David Miller stood by the tall bay window of the Miller estate, his gaze fixed on the sprawling garden, bathed in late afternoon sunlight. Sophie and Grace, his 5-year-old twin daughters, were a blur of motion among the flower beds. Two little whirlwinds of energy in matching denim overalls and rainbow sneakers. Sophie's blonde curls bounced as she chased a butterfly just out of reach, while Grace crouched near a cluster of daisies. Green eyes wide with fascination as a ladybug crawled along her finger. Their laughter floated through the open window, a sound so pure it made David's chest ache. It had been 3 years since Laura, his wife, passed away. The pain had never truly left, but these girls were his anchor. They carried Laura's smile, her spark, her stubborn little streak. And then there was Vanessa Reed. Vanessa had entered their lives like a summer storm, fast, intense, impossible to ignore. They met at a charity art event in downtown Portland, and within 6 months they were married. She brought warmth and elegance back into the home, and the twins adored her. David knew some people whispered about how quickly it happened, but he didn't care. For the first time since Laura's death, he felt like his family was whole again. From the kitchen, the sound of the garage door opening broke his thoughts. A sleek black SUV pulled into the driveway earlier than usual. Sophie and Grace spotted it instantly. Mommy Vanessa's home, they squealed, abandoning the ladybug to sprint toward the driveway. David followed them to the door, his heart beating a little faster. Vanessa stepped out graceful, even with her arms full of shopping bags. Her long brown hair caught the light, and she bent down, letting the twins throw themselves into her embrace. "My little princesses," she said warmly, kissing the tops of their heads. "I've brought you a surprise." Inside, she handed each girl a carefully wrapped box. Sophie tore hers open to reveal a shimmering blue princess dress. Grace's was a soft pink. "Just like Disney," Sophie shouted, clutching the fabric to her chest. Grace twirled in hers, immediately giggling. David watched Vanessa slip her arm around his waist. "They're perfect," she whispered. "Just like you," he replied, kissing her forehead. The evening unfolded like something out of a family magazine, Vanessa preparing ratatouille in the modern kitchen, while the twins colored at the dining table. David poured wine, the aroma of the food mingling with the sound of childish chatter. After dinner, Vanessa insisted on handling the dishes, urging David to take the girls upstairs for bed. In their enchanted forest-themed bedroom, David helped them into pajamas. But as he tucked them in, he caught something unusual, a quick, uneasy glance passing between them. "What is it, my loves?" he asked softly. Sophie hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Daddy, we saw something strange." Grace nodded, but before Sophie could continue, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her smile warm, but almost too perfect. "Ready for bed, my princesses?" she asked, leaning down to kiss them goodnight. The girls went quiet instantly. David felt a flicker of unease but brushed it aside. After all, 5-year-olds had vivid imaginations. Still, as he left the room with Vanessa, he noticed the twins huddling close, whispering in the dark. Later that night, the house settled into silence, at least until Sophie stirred. A faint, muffled voice floated in from the hallway. She sat up, frowning. It was Vanessa's voice, but it didn't sound like her. The tone was low, cold, deliberate. She nudged Grace awake. "She's saying something weird," Sophie whispered. The two crept to the door, peeking through the crack. Vanessa stood with her back to them, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes," she whispered, "everything is going according to plan. That idiot suspects nothing. Revenge will be sweet." Grace's small hand found Sophie squeezing tight. They didn't fully understand, but they knew enough to feel the fear curling in their stomachs. The next morning, Sophie tried to speak up at breakfast. "Daddy, can we?" But Vanessa interrupted, setting a plate of strawberry pancakes in front of them. The girls went quiet, eyes flicking between their father and stepmother. David noticed the tension, but couldn't quite pin down why. That afternoon, the twins found him alone in his home office. Sophie's eyes brimmed with urgency. "Daddy, we heard Mommy Vanessa last night. She said bad things." "About you," Grace added quickly. "She called you an idiot, and she said something about revenge." David felt the air shift in the room. He wanted to believe they had misheard, that it was just childish misunderstanding. But something in their voices, something raw and scared, lodged deep in his chest. He knelt down, cupping their faces in his hands. "I believe you heard something that frightened you," he said slowly. "And I'm glad you told me. But we need to be careful, all right? Let me figure out what's going on." Sophie bit her lip, hesitating. "There's more," she whispered. "Last week I woke up in the night, and I saw her in your office. She was taking pictures of papers in your desk. When she saw me, she said she was just looking for a pen." David's stomach tightened. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Watch the woman you married. Your daughters aren't safe." A chill ran down his spine. It could be a cruel prank, or it could mean someone else knew something he didn't. That night, David lay awake, staring at the ceiling, torn between the woman he thought he knew and the unsettling pieces falling into place. If Vanessa was hiding something, he had to know. Because if there was even the slightest danger to Sophie and Grace, he couldn't afford to wait. By midnight, he had made up his mind. He would watch quietly, carefully. And if the truth was as dark as the shadows creeping into his thoughts, he'd be ready to act no matter the cost. I'm so sorry to cut the story off here, but trust me, the next part will take you deeper into the night and into David's most shocking discovery yet. If you were in David's place, would you believe your children right away? Or would you need proof before confronting Vanessa? If you're curious to see what happens next, tap that heart and like this video so you don't miss the next part. That night, David's mind wouldn't rest. He replayed Sophie's whispered words over and over, the image of Vanessa in his office. The unknown text message, the way his daughters had clung to him, as if they were hiding from a storm no one else could see. He told himself he needed proof. He needed to know for certain before he confronted her. That resolve led him just past midnight into Sophie's room. The star-shaped nightlight glowed faintly, painting the walls with soft shadows. Sophie and Grace stirred as he knelt beside their beds. "It's me, Daddy," he whispered. "I'm going to stay here tonight, but I need you to pretend to be asleep no matter what happens. Can you do that for me?" They nodded, wide-eyed, but silent. He gave them each a quick kiss, then slid beneath Sophie's bed, the wooden frame pressing against his shoulder. From this vantage point, he could see the faint glow of the hallway leaking under the door and hear every creak of the old floorboards. The minutes stretched, each one longer than the last. The girl's breathing was steady above him, though he knew they were awake listening. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate, drawing closer. The door opened without a sound, and Vanessa's silhouette entered the room. She moved to Grace's bed first. David could hear her breath slow and steady, then her voice low but sharp as a blade. Poor sweet Grace. So easy to fool. You don't even know what's coming to you. David's pulse hammered in his ears. He forced himself to stay still. Vanessa crossed to Sophie's bed, her feet stopping inches from David's face. And you, Sophie, always watching, always suspicious. But soon none of it will matter. David's hands curled into fists under the bed. Every instinct screamed at him to get up to protect them, but he stayed hidden, swallowing the rising rage. After what felt like hours, Vanessa stepped back. He heard the faint click of her phone being unlocked. Her voice dropped even lower, almost a hiss. Yes, Dad. Everything's ready. The offshore accounts are waiting. We'll have it all soon. The company, the fortune. Even the girls, if it comes to that. Michael suspects nothing. Michael, his legal first name. Hearing it in her voice dripping with contempt made the words hit harder. David could barely process the implications: offshore accounts, revenge threats against his daughters before she turned and left the room. He stayed where he was until her footsteps faded, then slid out his chest tight. Sophie and Grace sat up, both trembling. "It's okay," he whispered, gathering them into his arms. "I heard everything. Nothing's going to happen to you. I promise." Grace's voice was small. "Is she bad?" David hesitated. "She's made very bad choices, but I'm going to make sure she can't hurt you." The rest of the night, he stayed in the armchair by their door, every sense alert. By morning, David had a plan. But the day brought new complications. Vanessa was warm and affectionate at breakfast, offering the girls their favorite cereal, laughing at small jokes. It was an act so convincing that David almost wondered if he'd imagined everything, until Sophie's eyes flicked to him silently, reminding him of the truth. At the office later, David couldn't focus on work. Between meetings, he called a trusted private investigator, explaining the situation in clipped, urgent tones. "Her name's Vanessa Reed. I need everything: background, financial history, family connections." Quietly. By the end of the week, the investigator called back. "David, her father isn't bankrupt. In fact, he's tied to an old corporate scandal involving your late father's company. I think this is personal." The words chilled him. This wasn't just theft, it was a vendetta. That night, David moved forward with the next step. He arranged for a security company to install additional cameras in the Miller estate. He approved the visible ones for Vanessa to see, but also had hidden devices placed in key areas: his office, the study, even the upstairs hallway near the twins' bedroom. It didn't take long to get results. On the third night after the installation, David watched the live feed from his laptop in his locked office. Vanessa entered the girls' room, sitting on Sophie's bed, stroking her hair. The tone was sweet, but her words cut like glass. "Remember, girls, we have our little secrets? Daddy wouldn't understand. And if you tell him, well, things might not be so nice for him. You wouldn't want that, would you?" The twins only nodded, their fear unmistakable. David's jaw clenched. This was no longer just about money. It was psychological warfare against his children. 2 nights later, he caught her in another act. She was in the study wearing latex gloves, carefully turning the combination lock on his personal safe. When he stepped into the doorway, she froze, then laughed lightly. "Oh, I was just looking for a pen." He said nothing, just stepped aside, letting her walk past. But inside, something in him shifted. The time for passive observation was ending. The next morning, as Vanessa showered, David entered her private office. At the back of a locked drawer, he found a folder thick with documents, coded financial records, bank statements, transfer schedules. One date was circled in red, just days away. He took photos of every page before returning them exactly as he found them. That night, lying in bed beside her, he stared at the ceiling in the dark. His mind was a storm: fear for his daughters, fury at the betrayal, the heavy knowledge that one wrong move could cost him everything. It was no longer a question of if he would act, but when. I'm sorry to stop here, but the next part will bring you face to face with David's most dangerous confrontation, yet one that could decide the fate of his family forever. If you were in David's place, would you confront Vanessa immediately, or keep gathering proof until the perfect moment? If you want to see the explosive next part, make sure to hit that heart and like this video so you don't miss it. David had been living on a knife's edge for days. Every conversation with Vanessa felt like a performance. Every glance from her, a silent question. Do you know he hid his exhaustion well, but the strain was wearing on him. The red circled date in Vanessa's hidden folder was now only 2 days away. That morning, as Sophie and Grace ate breakfast, David crouched down beside them, his voice low. "Grandma Evelyn misses you too. How about a surprise visit today?" Their eyes lit up, not because of the visit itself, but because they understood what it meant. They'd be safe. By noon, Evelyn's car was pulling away with the twins in the back seat, waving through the window. David stood there until the car vanished from sight, feeling the first real breath of relief in days. When he walked back into the house, Vanessa was in his office, fingers hovering over his laptop keyboard. "Just checking the weather for this weekend," she said, her smile thin. David returned her gaze calmly. "We need to talk." Her head tilted, almost amused. "Oh, about what? About you? About your father? About the plan you have to destroy me, my company, and my family?" The mask slipped for only a second, but it was enough. Her eyes hardened. "Well," she said quietly, "it seems we've reached the point where pretending is no longer necessary." Before David could respond, her phone buzzed. She put it on speaker. The voice that came through made his chest tighten. It was Richard Hale, the man he'd once trusted with his company's finances. "Is everything ready?" Richard's voice was steady, confident. Vanessa's lips curled. He knows Richard, but it doesn't matter. We're almost done here. David stepped forward. "Richard, I have proof. Transfers, coded documents, recordings. You won't get away with this." Richard chuckled darkly. "You think those scraps will save you? The board will believe what they see, and what they'll see is you as the architect of the fraud. You'll be finished." The room seemed to shrink, but David's voice didn't falter. "I've already been to the FBI. They know everything, and they're listening right now." Vanessa froze. "You're bluffing." But in that moment, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Her eyes darted toward the front door, then to David, her breath quickening. "I told you, Vanessa," he said softly. "This ends today." She bolted toward the side hallway, grabbing her handbag on the way. David followed, knowing exactly what was inside thanks to the small audio recorder he had planted earlier. As she reached for the back door, 2 FBI agents stepped in, blocking her path. Richard's voice was still spilling from the speakerphone when the agents took it from her. "Richard Hale, this is Special Agent Collins. You are under investigation for corporate fraud, conspiracy, and multiple counts of money laundering. We'll be seeing you soon." Vanessa's shoulders slumped. For the first time since he'd known her, she looked small, stripped of the power she thought she had. An hour later, the house was quiet again. Vanessa was gone, taken away in the back of a black SUV. The evidence David had gathered, his quiet nights under Sophie's bed, the hidden cameras, the photographs of financial records had all been enough to secure the case. That evening, Evelyn brought Sophie and Grace back home. They ran into David's arms, holding him as if afraid he might disappear. "Is she gone?" Sophie asked softly. "Yes," David said, his voice steady. "She can't hurt us anymore." Over the next weeks, the chaos slowly subsided. Richard was arrested and the truth came out in court. David's company took a blow, but survived thanks to the loyalty of a core group of employees who stood by him. He stepped down as CEO to focus on rebuilding not just the business, but their lives. With time, the house felt warm again. Sophie and Grace returned to laughing in the garden, chasing butterflies and ladybugs, just as they had before Vanessa came into their lives. David found joy in the small things, making pancakes in the morning, reading bedtime stories, hearing his daughter's laughter echo down the hall. One evening in late spring, he sat on the porch, watching the girls draw chalk pictures on the driveway. The sun was setting, casting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Evelyn joined him, a knowing smile on her face. "You did good, David," she said. He shook his head. "We got through it. That's what matters." As the months passed, David started a new venture, a consulting firm focused on corporate ethics and transparency. He wanted to use his hard-earned lessons to help other companies avoid the traps that had nearly destroyed his own. On the twins' 6th birthday, the Miller estate was filled with friends, family, and laughter. Sophie and Grace blew out their candles together, their cheeks puffed, their eyes shining. David stood back, taking in the scene, his heart full. Later that night, after the party was over and the girls were tucked into bed, Sophie padded into his room. "Daddy, yes, sweetheart." She climbed into his lap, resting her head against his chest. "I'm glad it's just us now. You, me, and Grace." David kissed her hair, his voice catching. "Me too, baby. The 3 of us. Always." The night was quiet, the stars bright above the garden. For the first time in a long while, David felt at peace, not because life was perfect, but because they had survived together. And now they could build something better. If you were in David's position, would you have risked confronting Vanessa earlier? Or waited until you had enough evidence to protect yourself and your family? What do you think about how the FBI handled this case? Would you have trusted them from the start, or tried to solve it on your own? What do you think about this story overall? Comment number 3 if you loved it. Number 2 if it was just okay, and number 1 if you weren't satisfied. Also, let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like, tap that heart, and share this video so more people can follow this journey.